loves. You're listening to the Be Well Beautiful People podcast, the show that inspires you to live your best joy-filled life, centering healing and liberation above everything. I'm your host, Demarra West, author of Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be in sacred space with you all. I am here in the Love Building, and today's episode is part of our Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact series, which is sponsored by the one and only Love Building, H&B Services, and the Lip Bar. We're highlighting incredible leaders that are doing impactful work right here in the great city that we get to call home, who have used their trauma, both individual and community lens of trauma, as a driver towards transformative work within Detroit and beyond. My hope is these conversations inspire you to step fully into your power so that you can discover or further ignite your own healing journey, which ultimately helps to heal the world. So glad to be here with Kwaku Osei, who is the executive director of the beautiful Love Building.
Thank you.
And yes, and if you didn't know this, he's also founder of Cooperative Capital, which is a community-based private equity fund that enables residents to pool their resources to make promising investments within their communities. We're going to be exploring Kwaku's journey as an economic freedom fighter. He has spent his entire life making sure that individuals have the financial resources that they need along with communities so that they can be rooted in all things abundance.
I appreciate that. It would be a stretch to say my entire life, but definitely within the last decade.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Just go. So, but before that, did it really matter what you were doing before you landed on economic freedom?
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
And so we probably going to get into that too.
Yeah, we should.
Because that was the whole journey.
Yeah. I arrived here. I didn't start here. And
I love that. All right. Okay. I love that. So before we get into this really rich conversation, I want to ground us in a quote by Coretta Scott King, which said, "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members." Just like Kwaku. And so I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you, King.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So you describe yourself as an economic freedom fighter. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for you? And how did your journey lead you to fight for economic freedom?
Yeah, so I what it means is I think we're unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of us are in a system that has essentially enslaved us economically.
Yeah.
And I know that because of the history of slavery in this country, then slavery has all types of other things attached to it. But truth be told, a lot of people are not in a position to be able to do what they want with their time, energy, and attention, and have to trade their time, energy, and attention towards being in jobs and places and spaces with people that they don't necessarily care for. And so there's a stat that, this is well outdated. It's probably, unfortunately, worse now, but there was a stat like 2012 or 2013 that said that it was about 70% of Americans that did not have any satisfaction within their job and so on and so forth.
That's on par with data that I recently found in preparation for this interview, right? That 70% of Americans, we're not even talking about globally, right? But 70% of Americans are experiencing financial insecurity.
Yeah.
That's a travesty.
Yep. And then there's another stat is over 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck or couldn't survive a $500 sudden emergency and such. And so in any event, there's a number of people that are just economically trapped in their respective situations, which aren't their ideal situations.
Yeah.
And so anyway, economic freedom fighting is basically trying to liberate folks, recognizing that money isn't an end all be all by any stretch of the imagination. But for a number of people, if they had more money or more resources, they would be able to be more self-sufficient and I think more satisfied with life and happier. And very fortunately for me, I had a few years ago landed on financial freedom for myself. As soon as I established financial freedom for myself, and by the way, you got to take a step back because financial freedom is a self-imposed definition that everyone has to define for themselves.
Yeah.
I think when we think about, I think that there's a misconception that most people think they want to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
There's no true definition to rich. I mean, you can look up what it means in the dictionary,
Sure.
but like rich is an ever evolving target. I have some friends that like thought that, yeah, I want to be a millionaire. And as soon as they got their first millions, now they're striving for more. So there's an ever evolving and ever ascending target typically.
Because that million felt so out of reach when they said it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about abundance. There's a discovery that there's always more.
Yeah. Well, so then what I try to tell people is like most people don't actually want to be rich. Most people want to be in a situation where they can live the life they'd like to live without being concerned about financial resources and how they're going to continue to be able to live the life they like to live while keeping a roof over their head and so on and so forth, and certain creature comforts, if you would.
Yeah.
So in any event, that is something that is more easily definable, what financial freedom is. And for me, at one point, and it's evolving actually, but at one point, financial freedom for me was I want to be able to do nothing but read this book for 2-3 weeks straight and have not a worry in the world of what doing nothing but reading this book, whatever book it was, how that would affect my well-being after that 2 to 3 week period. And so then I basically started to say, okay, if that's my definition, what's got to be true in order for that to become a reality? And I started checking that stuff off. And so this was maybe about 6 or so years ago, I landed on my financial freedom, and now it's evolving. And very fortunately for me, I think it's easier for me because at this moment I'm a single man with not much responsibility except for like taking care of myself. And so, but any event, when I got my financial freedom, then it afforded me the ability to place my time, energy, and attention on where I wanted to put it. And I wanted to basically, because the other piece of it is that once you get there, and when you have no necessity to be working Monday through Friday, you'll find that the majority of people that are, and it could be lonely. And so I'm like, man, I really wish that I had more peers, more of my friends, more of my colleagues that could be in the same situation, because then we could be hanging and dreaming of what we would like to do together.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of became my mission, is like, I was financially free at that level, and I want to extend that to as many people as possible, because I'm just certain that if folks had such freedom, what they would choose to do with their time and their lives really would be so much more, I think, fulfilling and so much more aligned with the deep beauty within them versus what most people are forced to do to survive or get along in this world.
Yeah, well, and knowledge is real power, right? And I think that so oftentimes we see the world based on what we've been exposed to, right? This is why the $1 million becomes the mark. And then when we hit the $1 million, which is really amazing, we know that many people don't even get close to that, right? But knowing that when you get to that point, there is more that you discover that you can have for yourself. And before we talk about your unique journey to financial freedom, I really want to emphasize this word freedom, right? Because I think that's in part what sets the traditional way that we think about wealth, right? We're talking about being able to move through the world the way that we choose to, with very limited consequences, because we have the financial means to not only take care of our basic needs, but we have the financial means to be able to move and ebb and throw through life the way we want to, whether that's going to the restaurant or going to the concert or going on a trip or whatever that might be. Yep. And it's very much on par with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The way in which, even though we've been able to conjure up some amazing ideas out of very little, right? Out of very little, imagine what we could do foundationally if we had a lot.
Yeah.
Right? If we had a lot. And like you said, if you had other people that could be alongside you that had the same amount of freedom, oh my gosh, the world really becomes unstoppable from that particular place.
That's right.
And what I want to say really quickly too is that, you know, there was a data point that I read years ago when I first started the Children's Defense from Freedom Schools program in Kalamazoo. And that was that there's a threshold, right, to happiness and income, right? So, but the problem is that
like
most
70
people
grand or
haven't
something like
even,
that, or-
you're right.
yeah,
It's about 70,000 for a single person. It's probably very similar today, maybe a little bit more because of
Yeah.
inflation and things of that nature. But to think about that amount, though, that's still far removed from what the majority of people are making within this country,
That's
right? And we equate hard work to financial prosperity, but the reality is that people are working hard every single day.
That's right.
And they have an inability to even take care of some of their basic necessities.
That's right. And that goes back to the economic enslavement that I mentioned.
Yeah.
It's like some people are actually trapped in their respective, and you know, there's that saying that being poor is very expensive, you know? And so it's a systemic
There's a lot of
thing.
money to be made off of being poor.
That's right. Payday, loans, and so on and so forth.
Come on
and
now.
all types of extractive, exploitative practices, the liquor stores and the fast food places that aren't supportive to healthy environments that are conducive to not only economic but social mobility, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah.
And that's why your work is so important. So before we get into that work, your labor of love, I want you to talk about like when you reach that point, how did you get there, right? Because you're pretty young, right? Some people live their whole lives, and right, everything is relative.
Yeah, that's right.
But some people live their whole lives and never can say that they have financial freedom.
Yeah.
So what was your story to get there?
Yeah. So my story briefly, I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia. That's where I grew up, and went to school at VCU. That's Virginia Commonwealth University. Go Rams.
All right.
Graduate degree in marketing, and thereafter I joined Deloitte Consulting, where I primarily consulted with federal agencies, but I bounced around quite a bit within that organization, just trying to get the most meaningful experience I possibly could. And I really didn't enjoy it. And so after being there for close to 2 years, I was looking for something more meaningful and impactful to me.
Yeah.
I did a pre-MBA program at Yale as well as a Harvard Business School. Was going to pursue my MBA at Harvard. Had a change of heart, and serendipitously found out about a fellowship program called Venture for America. Venture for America is an organization that actually shut down this year, so that's unfortunate.
Oh man.
But it needed to shut down, quite frankly, and I renounced my my membership, or my alumniship, I should say, or alumnus to the organization based on some of the practices. So it sucks, but it doesn't surprise me that they ended the way they ended.
But it doesn't take away also from how that program impacted you, right?
So
we can live in duality.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a huge appreciation and gratitude for what that organization afforded me, because it is the organization that brought me to Detroit in 2013. Now, interestingly enough for me, I had first come to Detroit through Deloitte in 2011. I was here for a brief engagement, 3 weeks. Fast forward through Venture for America, I'm interviewing with a number of firms, and one of them was a venture capital firm in Detroit called Detroit Venture Partners. Get to a third round with them. Hey, Kwaku, we really like you. It's a special opportunity we think you'd be great for, and they threw me an interview with Dan Gilbert.
Wow.
We hit it off. He hires me onto his team. I'm basically me almost wherever. You know, I'd shift. I could, different season and different flavor type thing, but I'm me wherever. So I was just me being me.
Yeah.
And some would say that I was gutsy. Maybe some would use other language, but Dan really appreciated and respected the way I showed up.
Because you were authentic.
Yeah.
And there's something deeply refreshing about being authentic.
Yeah.
And we live in a world that tells us all the time that we shouldn't be who we are, particularly being a black man in this country, being a black woman in this country. And so even the fact that you knew you were liberated enough to be able to walk in and take up space, and that gave you the gift of the starting point for this financial freedom that you're about to break down for us.
Well, I think that's true. And I think that at the time, there were a number of folks that I think wanted to please him in ways that weren't always congruent with reality. So yes, people type thing. And I was the one that always kept it real, whether it was comfortable or not.
Yeah.
And, straddled that line, but nonetheless was just me. And then I'm an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur. So we saw each other eye to eye.
Yeah.
So before you know, he just took me under his wing, exposed me to, at that time, this is 2013, I was there from 2013 to 2015. So he just took me under his wing, exposed me to everything he had going on. At the time, the company was still called Quicken Loans.
Yeah.
And so he just took me through the empire, basically more or less. And after working close with him for a year, just doing very special projects, we started a company together.
Yeah.
Which is a tech startup that still exists. It's now called Sift, but it was different. When I was leading it, I became the CEO of that company for a little over a year, and then I got pushed out of it. Not by him, but anyway. So after that, I started buying a lot of real estate in Detroit, all mostly concentrated in the same neighborhood where the Motown Museum is. This was 2015, 2016. I was able to buy close to 50 properties for $45,000.
Wow.
And yeah, it was for me, growing up in Alexandria, Virginia, and watching what happened in D.C. as I was growing up, it was pattern recognition. I had the benefit of only seeing Detroit twice before moving here, formally. I saw it in 2011 and I was like, what is going on here? And Detroit wasn't in a national narrative at the time, so I was really confused.
Yeah.
Fast forward 2013, I came in the spring of 2013 and it was a completely different place. Then, of course, it was the summer of 2013 that Detroit went through its bankruptcy, and it was a few months prior to that Detroit really started elevating into the national narrative around the bankruptcy. But the city had already turned around, so that bankruptcy was like wiping the slate clean on a city that was clearly on an upsurge already.
Yeah.
And so there was no
They
better,
were late to the party.
There was no better place to be. And I had, again, the benefit of only seeing it before I moved here, only seeing Detroit twice. Right?
What's really interesting about this, and we're going to talk about briefly the state of Detroit, right? And I'm going to talk about a data point that I really that nearly took my breath away, right? But so many people to this day are still sleeping on Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
And there was something about the fact that you bought 50 properties for $45,000. Can you tell us really quickly what that $45,000 has turned into? You didn't know I was going to ask y'all. Did you see how he just looked? He didn't know I was going to ask him that.
What I'll say is I no longer own all those properties. And so, and that's a part of more of the journey that I'll share. But yeah, that portfolio is probably worth about, last I checked, it was like $1.5 million. And that was about 8-9 months ago. So it's now, since then, there's been 3 major projects that have been announced that are right adjacent, including the largest investment outside of the downtown Detroit in Detroit's history, which is the Henry Ford Health expansion along with Michigan State and the Detroit Pistons. So that's a overall
So your
$3
piece
billion.
of the pie,
Yeah.
your piece of the pie was one of the most significant investments made in that area of Detroit in its history.
Outside of downtown, it's the largest investment that Detroit's ever seen. It's a $3 billion investment, $2.2 billion of which is underway now. Outside of that, the Motown Museum has began their expansion, and that's a $70 million project. And then there's don't quote me on this, it needs to be fact checked, but Lee Plaza is finally going. I think that's about $100 million investment. And so all 3 of these are right there. It's, that is the neighborhood essentially.
Absolutely.
And so,
but you saw the vision, right? There was something. So for the listeners out there who, there's still plentiful opportunities here in Detroit, plentiful opportunities. Sure. And so what advice do you have for them to get in on this while they can, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got left behind Bitcoin. I'm gonna be real honest. There are people
that was another investment I made earlier. So
you knew I was late to the party.
What's interesting about the Bitcoin thing is that again, I was leading a tech startup, and one of my engineers surfaced Bitcoin to me. I want to say it was 2013. And he's like, no, this is 2014. Excuse me. He's like, hey man, there's this thing called Bitcoin and da da da. And I'm looking at him like, get that out of my face. Like, I'm like, dude, like, get out of my face. I don't got time for this.
Yeah.
Fast forward. So I would end up buying this real estate, and then I got lured back home to the D.C. area, where I was on the fast track of becoming a partner of a local government contracting firm. And I was basically paid to dress up, look a lot nicer than I do now, and to become buddies with government officials to win contracts for our firm. Sleaziest thing I'd ever done. Didn't think that was what I was doing when I was signing up for this thing, and didn't even stick around for a year. And after that, I was pretty messed up because back to back, I got to see our system from 3 different angles in such a way I couldn't unsee things I saw, and what I saw just completely challenged my understanding of the way capitalism was meant to work and operate. It really disabused me of my naive notion of the beauty of capitalism. That there is a beauty in capitalism. Anyway, moving right along, that I went into a deep, deep, deep funk, and when I came out of it, I basically said, for the rest of my life, I'm committed to basically, solve systemic issues at the root of those issues. I then got to get creative about how I attach an economic engine to the solutions I'm coming up with, such that these things could potentially become not only financially lucrative should they work, but also could get off the ground without requiring too much money to get off the ground.
I feel like in part what you're saying is that you wanted to do good and do well.
That's right. That's
right.
Exactly right.
And I actually have a sweatshirt that says do good and do well. But a lot of times we believe that we can't do both.
That's right.
And what you were able to do from that dark moment in your life that you described was innovation was bred from that place, right?
Well, yeah.
You knew from that place what was most essential for you, and you were able to take everything that you knew and to put a spin on it that was very unique in terms of community impact.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And
Yeah.
so this goes to show us that when hardship comes our way, it is for us.
That's right.
It's for us to help us to align with the truths of who we are so that we can work in the most authentic, innovative ways possible for the greater good of us and for the greater good of humanity.
Yeah. What I'll say to that is what I've learned in my life thus far is that every single thing is a gift. Every single thing is a gift.
Yes.
Life is a gift. And,
Yes.
And every single thing in it, even when that gift is packaged in ways that look terrifying and terrible. And even when we get that gift and we open it up and then it feels terrible. You never know how that thing that was delivered to you at that point can potentially be the mess. I almost I'll take a step back and then I'm gonna get right back to the story. But I'm a believer in God majorly. And I feel like God is the master painter. And we are, let's say we're the canvas. And so sometimes, as the master painter is doing his thing, then you get this vicious stroke on the canvas. You're like, whoa, and it looks very, very nasty and ugly. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. But you got to chill. You got to chill. You got to trust the master painter knows what's going on.
And this recognition that everything's working for us.
After the layers, after more paint's applied, you never know how that, what appeared to be a vicious stroke, when 4 more paint pieces, how that vicious stroke ends up being the thing that makes that piece the masterpiece that it ends up being.
Yeah.
It ends up being like, oh my God, look at that little thing, how that sparkles in that way. That,
Well, and it's an invitation for us to see the beauty in everything, right? And that, even though you're describing yourself as the canvas and as God as the painter, we are actually the painters too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we get to paint alongside God, universe, source, creator, and create the kind of lives that we can dream of and the kind of lives that we don't even know. And I think that stroke that you talked about, right, that it's like so disruptive, a lot of times we have to be disrupted in spirit in order to go along the pathway that is ultimately of our highest use and our highest good.
Yeah.
And that's exactly in part what has happened for you. And I imagine that as you continue to see the beauty in life and as you continue to show up with a level of intention, that economic freedom will continue to expand for you and expand for the people that you know that you've uniquely been positioned to support within your work, because we're all uniquely placed to do something significant for self and significant for the world.
Yeah.
So,
so I got to continue because
please.
That was I took the most scenic route to get into this. So I would end up going to deep funk, and when I came out of it, one of the solutions I came up with was would end up resulting in an organization called Cooperative Capital. And Cooperative Capital is an organization I would end up starting August 2016. And it's an organization where we enable residents to pool their money together in one big pot and as one collective unit, invest those monies in several opportunities throughout their own community. During this time in 2016, then, as I'm starting this thing, crypto, there was a thing called the DAO, DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And this was like basically a managerless VC where folks were pooling dollars together. There would be a group or a committee that basically review proposals for how that money would be spent. But then everyone that put money into the pot would get to vote on where the monies would go. And should there be successful investments, then folks would get their respective share of the return on investment. And that was what I was building with cooperative capital, just that we had a geographic boundary. So I'm like, oh, this is really cool.
Wow.
And at the time, Bitcoin was like, I want to say it was like $500, $600. So I'm like, damn, I missed the boat on that. I bought 2 Bitcoin at the time. I'm like, damn, I missed the boat on that. But this Ethereum thing, which was what the DAO was being built on top of, I'm like, my limited understanding at the time was like, Ethereum could do what Bitcoin can do, but it's also kind of being built as the platform of the cryptocurrency space. So there's a lot of stuff being built on top of it. So I felt I missed the boat with Bitcoin, but here's Ethereum. And at the time, Ethereum was, I was buying stuff for like $15, $16. The DAO raised, I want to say, $250 million in 30 days. It was the largest crowdfunded project at the time in history. And then it got hacked when it was released. Ethereum's price nosedives. And I bought more because it was like people were blaming Ethereum, but Ethereum had nothing to do with it. The DAO was its own independent project that they were building on top of Ethereum. So I would end up buying some additional. And of course, hindsight being 2020, wish I bought a lot more. But I ended up getting like 300 tokens at an average of $12.
Wow.
And so that's $3,600 total. And of course, I would end up selling some and so on and so forth. But you just look at that. And that was 2016, summer of 2016. Fast forward today, now 2024, I think that Ethereum is trading just about 2,500.
Wow.
And so that 300 tokens I got for 3,600 equates to about $750,000 in today's money. And that was another bet that I'd made that went really, really well for me in that regard. So,
because you trusted yourself,
well,
right? We didn't trust ourselves with Bitcoin, but you trusted yourself at this next round.
Well, I just always I saw a real possibility, and I invested. I mean, when we talk about these properties at close to 50 properties for $45,000, that's not a lot of money.
No.
$3,600 for something that had, and I of course had no idea that Ethereum would grow. I had real belief that there was something significant being built here, but I had no idea that it would grow as quickly as it did. So I won't, but basically just kind of looking ahead and saying there's a tremendous amount of potential here, and this is really cheap. I say that to both opportunities. I've done that a couple times outside of these 2 that I'm giving.
Because you saw something, and I think this is really critical because even though right around the time that you landed in Detroit, Detroit had seen a 25% reduction in their population over the span of 10 years. So even though there was a resurgence, as you talked about, right? The bankruptcy, it had and I know that Detroiters don't like this idea of people talking about Detroit coming back. And so I want to be really clear. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that Detroit was starting to be invested into again in a progressive way.
That's right.
That changed things. Like when I came to Detroit, long before I moved here, I went to downtown Detroit and it was desolate.
Yeah. Yep.
It was desolate, nearly a ghost town,
Yep.
literally. So now you go to downtown Detroit, there has been a level of resurgence. There is energy there. There are businesses that are open. So although the people and the spirit of Detroit has always been a part of the fabric of this beautiful community, the reality is that in many ways, there was a lot of abandonment that had happened. There was a lot of community trauma that took place.
Yeah, there was, I think all your points are good ones, but it was a systemic and an intentional disinvestment, I think, stemming from, the first Black mayor of Detroit, Coleman Young, who, if you actually look at his history, he did tremendous things, but he was unapologetically Black. And I don't think that the country wanted to see such a powerful Black man succeed. And so there was this,
and particularly in a community where you're talking about the majority of Black people living here. Right?
Yeah. So the city, I believe, is still dang near almost 80% Black. It's like 70-something percent.
100%, right? And so, and when you, and I know that we're going to talk more about some of the community trauma and the work that you've done. So you started this pool, and I imagine that for you, there have been things that have happened that you couldn't even conceive, right? As people have conjured up these ideas, they've pulled their money together. So what kind of transcendent work has happened as a result of this beautiful body of work that you've put together?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. So, quite frankly, the cooperative capital story was one that had all entrepreneurship has highs and lows, and this wasn't unique in that there was some super high highs, but there were some super low lows. And I would end up getting investigated 3 times by the state of Michigan. We got past every single investigation, but for the first 4 years that I led Cooperative Capital, we were shut down under investigation for 22 or 48 months. And it was stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. And it was nothing I ever expected because I was being very transparent and communicative with the agency that would, launch these investigations. And it messed with me first financially, which then messed with me mentally, which then messed with me spiritually, which then started messing with me physically. And it was in that physical breakdown that I was like, if I'm gonna commit to this type of work, which I said I dedicated the rest of my life to this type of work, then I got to properly resource myself. And that actually led me to starting my the latest social enterprise that I had, which is called Pharmacy Food. So we started that thing. It was an idea that I came up with. I'm going to fast forward because it could take forever.
Yeah, sure.
But basically, Pharmacy Food was like food is medicine, realized more or less. And it came to me because I was super, we just gotten past a significant challenge with cooperative capital, and I was relieved, but I was depleted and I was depressed. And I knew why, but I also knew that, the pressure was no longer there. And so any event, I was sitting on my desk, and this is going on for weeks, and I'm just sitting on my desk like, man, wanted to take some things off the table for why I'm feeling this way. And I was just like, man, I knew that I didn't eat well because, single man. My mother is a phenomenal cook, so never really let me cook. I don't want to say wouldn't let me cook, but always cook for me in a way that I didn't have to.
You was fortunate in that regard.
Very fortunate.
Should I call you baby boy in that, right?
No,
we won't give you that
here.
term.
No Tyrese here. But I didn't know how to cook, and so I'm eating the stuff that's readily available, which is typically not the good stuff.
Process.
So I'm sitting at my desk, man, like, yo, if there was ever a place that would take my health information and use that to create meals that were optimal for me and were delicious, I would give them whatever information they requested. And that was the seed of what would become Pharmacy Food. And
can I put a pin in this for 1 second? This is really, really powerful because, again, it was a moment of immense hardship that breeded your next big idea. You didn't set out to be a food-based entrepreneur.
Not at all.
Right? And it started with this recognition that you were in a state of emergency, essentially, right? You said it, mentally, physically, emotionally. You were probably even questioning why you were still showing up and doing this work, right? And you wanted to recommit, but then you realized, oh my gosh, in order for me to show up fully and do this work, I've got to take better care of this body.
Absolutely. And I recognize that was true for me, but it was true for a lot of us.
So many, and particularly entrepreneurs where, yes, even
leaders.
though we have the freedom, right? A lot of times our choices aren't always aligned with having an abundant life.
Well, it's typically, especially in the earlier days, it's a go, go, go thing. So once you're go, 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 you don't have the time to be as intentional and deliberate about some of your food choices.
Yeah.
And the quickest food choices, I mean, when you talk about fast food is the quote unquote quickest choices, and you know what fast food is. That's McDonald's. That's so folks are typically grabbing the quickest, most convenient thing, which isn't healthy, and
literally poisoning.
That's
and
right.
We're poisoning our body. Now, once in a while, a little poison isn't going to kill us.
That's right. That's right.
But if we're consuming poison on a regular basis, and we're finding research that connects gut health with brain
anxiety,
health.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So if we put better food in our body, so what kind of things have happened? Talk to me about not just the impact of this business, right? And how it has fueled financial freedom for yourself further.
It didn't actually. It almost affected our financial freedom. So
and not that that's funny.
Yeah, no,
I'm just
fine.
laughing alongside you.
I can laugh at it because it is what it is. And I'm what I recognize is that there are many parts of my story that are embarrassing, but I'm not at all embarrassed.
No,
You know?
and I wouldn't even say embarrassing. They're just true.
Well, they're embarrassing to me at the moment, but like I'm actually it's I'll skip that because
because you have so many things that you can celebrate, and I think what you're doing, and I really appreciate this, and it speaks to your character, is that you are illuminating the highs and the lows of your life, and all of it has shaped you, right? And going back to the story that you shared earlier, you have chosen, once you got over the embarrassment, I'm just using your words, you were able to see the beauty in it.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that goes back to saying everything is a gift, and you just never know. I'll tell you, there were times, because essentially what happened is I'm a really gifted investor. So I've made these investments, the real estate, the crypto, a number of other things that I've invested in. And when I started both Cooperative Capital and then Pharmacy Food, and we started Pharmacy Food in the midst of the pandemic, literally launched it April 2020 because we love ourselves. Because the need was greater then, but we had no idea what was going to happen. The whole world over, all industries were impacted by the pandemic. The hospitality and food and beverage industries were especially negatively impacted in ways that no one could have foreseen. And so we started in the midst of that. In any event, Pharmacy Food existed for about 3 years and had to shut it down. And when we shut it down, I had about $160,000 a debt that I was responsible for. So that actually started to, up until recently. So the announcement shares that I'm the executive director of the Love Building. But for seven and a half years, because I started this job February 27th, so yesterday was actually my 8-month mark. Prior to that, it was 7.5 years of me doing social entrepreneurial things that didn't work out. And what I'm thankful for is that the investments I made allowed me, I basically had to sell off some of my assets to be able to continue to invest in these things and continue to live my lifestyle. That's the gift that I thank God for, because it's like I got to experiment in the ways that I wanted to, even if they didn't work out.
Well, you kept failing forward.
That's right.
And even though I hear you say, and I certainly don't want to take away from your truths, right? You still have a very robust portfolio.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
So you didn't really fail. And you've learned so many things. You're healthier now, right?
Yep.
You launched that business for yourself first, right? Sure, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But you learned many, many things. And everything that you've done over the last 7 years has brought you here.
That's right. Yeah.
And are you living the life of your dreams right now?
Just shy of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the gift is I have the privilege and the honor of getting to wake up every day and be excited about what I'm doing. I'm getting paid really well to do what I'm doing, and I get to basically put on for our people and our community, and get creative and clever about how we do that. So it is a dream in many ways, and but it's still just, I want to continue doing what I'm doing. I feel like when I joined this organization, what was really awesome about it is that there were a number of things that when I made that commitment that this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, I was doing that kind of on my own, on my own time and on my own dime. And my dime was much more limited. Now with joining an organization that is fortunate to not only have a very beautiful space, but I have a beautiful team in a way that I didn't have a team. I had team members, but couldn't afford to, get the type of help and assistance. Exactly.
It was mainly new. And now you in it with a cadre of people.
Yeah.
And so you were powerful before. Now it's really about to shake some stuff up. And already have, right? Already have. So I love this recognition that all the things that you've done brought you to the Love Building, right?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about that. The Love Building is about leading, nurturing, and promoting health, wealth, and love, right?
Yep.
So leading with that, nurturing that, having health, wealth, and love at the forefront. So how do you cultivate health, wealth, and love for yourself?
Oh, man. So first and foremost, I got that health, wealth, and love thing from a book I want to say it was the master key system. And it called those 3 things the keys to happiness. And so we put that at the forefront of the love building because we believe that if you have those 3 things and we're very intentional about it, then anyone can live a dignified life and a life worth living, and one that will bring happiness. If you truly have great health, good wealth, and strong love,
What's more than
that's
that?
life right there.
That's it.
So I forgot the question.
We can just drop the mic. So really, I'm asking you. I mean, it's
how are
2
we
part, right? How do
cultivating it?
you
How am I cultivating
cultivate it for
myself?
yourself?
Yeah.
And also, I want to just give another follow up to that. Not only how do you cultivate it for yourself, but why do you think that health, wealth, and love is essential for Detroit to heal from years of hardship?
Sheesh.
That's a big ass question.
That is a big question.
I know.
I'll tell you this. What I'm recognizing and what I'm very, very thankful for my journey is that I would end up learning that I didn't have love for myself the way I thought I had love for myself. I didn't have self-love. In fact, what I would end up recognizing through my journey was that I had a master-slave relationship with myself, which is really sick to say. And whenever I have to own, we have to own our truths. I think that's supportive. But that's when I recognized that. When I was able to put that terminology and said it out loud, it was such a harsh reality. I'm like, you live in a world that doesn't necessarily care for you, or you live in a place. Excuse me. You live in a land that doesn't necessarily care for you, and then you're treating yourself in this way, in this master-slave thing. And is that conducive to anything healthy? Is that conducive to anything that you desire? And so as soon as I came up with that terminology, I'm like, oh, shit, and shifted. So the first thing I did was I started becoming, I stopped that and started becoming big brother to myself. And that was the first shift that was very powerful. And now it's since evolved where I'm now being leader to myself. In other words, maybe many people don't have a master-slave relationship within themselves, but a lot of people treat themselves like the most horrible boss to themselves, right? So I'll just back up and kind of, put some flesh around the master-slave relationship. I was certain of my potential and what I was capable of. I was giving myself all types of assignments. So master was decreeing to slave, do this, do that. When slave couldn't keep up, master was berating and beating slave up, And if people don't have that relationship with themselves, many people have the horrible boss, which is like, who's the worst boss you've ever worked for? And most people treat themselves that way.
Come on.
When I shifted from the big brother thing, I'm like, yo, who's the leader that you want to be? Or who is the greatest leader that you could think of? Can you treat yourself that way?
Yes.
And what does a great leader do? When I fall short from what I am intended to do on a given day, or when I go against one of my principles, or I'm not being as self-disciplined as I'd like, instead of berating myself and harkening on myself, I'm treating myself like the leader I like to be, which is holding myself accountable, but really taking the time to really talk to myself like, yo, what's going on? And touching base with myself in a way that cultivates and really fosters the environment that has been supportive and very helpful for me.
Yeah, I love that. And even though, of course, we could get into the specifics, I think that people will derive what they will from that, right? And I don't think that you can live in this country and not have some internalized racial oppression. That's in part what you named. And what I appreciate about this ownership that you took over your own life is to say, gosh, I can't allow anyone or anything to treat me worse than what I treat myself, or better than what I treat myself.
There you go.
Right? And what the Four Agreements talks about essentially is that our liberation is rooted in our ability to know thyself, to care for thyself, to nurture thyself, to defy any ideas that the world might have about ourselves that is actually anti, but also to mind every single thought that we have to say, is this thought a loving thought or not?
Yeah.
Right? Am I creating dark magic for my life, or am I creating light magic? And so when you did that, what happened for you?
Yeah, the shift was real. Well, the other thing I should say I did was what I started to learn was that there was nothing external that could solve for the internal, and that there's just a tremendous, I mean, a lot of people like to travel the world, and I like to travel the world too, but there is a universe inside of us. And unfortunately, most people have spent more time traveling the globe than they have traveling within themselves.
Or
and being
looking on the
within themselves.
outside, right? And so I love that you're acknowledging that the truth lies within.
That's right.
And
That's
that as
right.
you've gotten still, as you've started to mind those thoughts,
That's
as
right.
you started to nurture yourself, you realize that, oh my gosh, I don't have to work so hard.
Yeah, well,
and oh my
yeah.
God, ideas can just come to me. And there are people out there that I can rock with where I don't have to do this. I don't got to figure this out on my own.
That's right. What I discovered in that process, and I discovered, I should say, there's a few internal rooting activities that I've done. So I've been a meditator since 2010, and meditation is huge. But then I started journaling, reading, writing with journaling. There's one other thing that I'm blanking on. It was like 5. Meditating, reading, exercising, praying, and journaling. And those are my kind of 5 internal rooting activities. I do this, when I do this consistently, and actually I have a daily practice that I call PREM, prayer, reading. I read a chapter of a book a day. Exercise, I try to move, and exercise now includes stretching for me. So I try to move my body at least 15 minutes a day. And then meditating, I meditate for between 15 to 25 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. And creating that space basically to do that then I'm basically strengthening myself mentally, physically, spiritually every day that I honor that practice. And you do that and you create more time and space for yourself, and you get still enough to be able to really listen to and there's just so much inside. What I started to recognize was that there was a tremendous amount of beauty inside of me, so much beauty, and I really needed to create more time and space to be with it, to understand it, and then to start to try to work on bringing the beauty inside of me, outside of me, into
Come
this
on
world.
now. You
And
are
so,
speaking my language,
yeah.
right? And what's so beautiful is that no matter how many times I have conversations like this, no matter who the person is, what their journey has been, the baseline for our evolution is rooted in the practices that we consistently apply that help us to create space within thyself. Right? And doing that over and over and over again continues to help you to discover more and more and more of who you are, and more of who you were always intended to be. So that's just really beautiful. So when you think about what it's done for you, what can these principles do for the city of Detroit and beyond?
Which principles?
All of these, right? When we're talking about, right, when you said the love building is going to be designed with health, wealth, and love at the forefront. As you talked about what it did for you, what will it do for a city like Detroit?
I'll go back to the internal rooting piece for a moment and then answer that question, because I think the reality is that there's a tremendous amount of depression, anxiety, loneliness. There's a lot of doom and gloom around. And quite frankly, it's like our environments are toxic, essentially. And it's almost impossible to be in a toxic environment. I don't care how strong you are. If you sit in a toxic environment for too long, it's going to seep within you. Which is what makes it extremely important to do those internal rooting activities. It's almost like, think of it all as like stimuli. We're constantly being bombarded, whether it be through social media, news, of all the negative and wrong things. And if you think about like all of this information that's coming into us through our eyes, through our mouths, et cetera, then it's almost like you're chunking the brain with all this negative stuff. The meditation, I feel, is like almost like a brain cleanse. It's almost like, it is the accelerator of being able to declutter and to be able to process. Because the other piece of it is like, we are now combated with more stimuli than than ever. I mean, shoot, we're having a conversation right now. I just saw my buddies walk by. I got several emails. As soon as I get off here, I'm gonna check, So there's all of this stimuli, all of this information, all of this stuff, and our brain wants to process all of it, which is why sometimes you'll be in the shower, and when you're in the shower, you're kind of walking, doing something, and you just remember, like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And it'll be something that you were supposed to do maybe a couple weeks ago. that is the sign of your brain's just catching up to that piece that was still stuck, you know? And I feel like meditation is a great accelerator of processing all that stimuli.
Yeah.
Right. So
and it just helps you slow down.
That too.
It just helps you slow down and stay grounded.
That too.
And remember that that's part of your natural design.
Absolutely.
Not to be busy all the goddamn time.
Absolutely.
Right? We got to create.
Yeah.
But we got to be still.
Yeah.
And actually, when we're still, we can create more.
That's right. That's right. So if they're, you know, if you're like most people and you're living in an environment that is toxic, then there's still a tremendous amount of beauty in you if you create time and space to tap into it. And that could be the deterrent of not allowing for that toxicity to seep into you so much and that it locks you down. Because that's the other piece. Anxiety, it's expensive to be, it's very expensive. Life is expensive when you're poor. Anxiety, depression also has a very, very high toll on what it enables you to do, from just the ability to function properly, but also to think and to like actually think critically and creatively.
Absolutely.
And so once you remove all that stuff, then it allows you to kind of see things more clearly, to your point.
Yeah.
And so anyway, now going back to like Detroit, like, so first I want that for more people, but then as it relates to like the health, wealth, and love, and us doing it in a communal way, recognizing, helping folks recognize that like, we're all here. We're all in this together. Should we connect and choose to do this together, then I'm blanking on the exact question you asked, but like what I think it could potentially look like as we continue to do the work that we're going to do here that basically bands people together and creates strong bonds, then more folks will recognize that there's a tremendous amount of value amongst us. And I'll just take a step back and talking, because we're talking about freedom and specifically economic freedom. The thing that people have to recognize is that, like, I'm going to just tell this short story and keep it moving. Money, the story of money, the way it's been told is wrong. And the often misconstrued story is that money was an innovation that replaced the bartering system. Money then being a medium of exchange of value that enabled us, instead of like, you know, hey, you were a chicken farmer, I was the orange guy, and instead of me saying, hey, 50 oranges to your chicken, we came up with these pieces of paper or what have you to exchange more fluidly. The issue is now money has been co-opted and corrupted such that very few people have way too much money, more money than they know what to do with. And far too many people have too little money, not enough money to do the things that's within them to do. The issue is that we've gotten too focused on money exchange versus value exchange. And just because there's so many people that don't have money, but does not mean they don't have value. They have a tremendous amount of value. So what we're focused on is creating the connections, because quite frankly, you look at a lot of the startups of today, a lot of the biggest businesses, it's typically 2 to 4 people that had a common vision, or they had a vision for a product, a project, or a service. They had complementary skill sets, and then they worked together collaboratively, harmoniously to bring each other's strengths out and about. They combined their complementary skill sets to build what have now become multi-billion-dollar companies. That's the story of every tech startup, right? And so like the issue is that within our community, too often, I've seen this happen so many times. It's like you and I talking, you have this great idea. I'm a great marketer. And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm really excited about that. I'm like, hey, but Demarra, you know, my rate is $150 an hour. And you're like, ooh, I don't got $150 an hour right now. And far too often, that's where our conversation is. I'm like, all right, well, get at me when you do. What we need to start to do is to have the conversation. Oh, you don't have that, but what do you have that could be an exchange of value that would give me something that makes me feel comfortable making this investment? Because the reality is,
because when I help you with this marketing, you're going to be able to afford that $150.
Precisely that. That's the value. Our merging our respective strengths together in that way is going to create value that could then lead to the money where we both get paid very handsomely.
So what I love about this, as we get ready to wrap up, is that you're talking about the energy of money, right? Which is rooted in abundance principle, right? Everything has energy. And when you put value on people, then you know that money is just a a source, if you will, for doing good in the world, for doing good in somebody's life, for doing good in community, in whatever ways that we see fit. And this is how we can have a positive connection with money, knowing that money can do real good, particularly if we can have this value spent on it. So that was really, really beautiful that you made that connection. So I know that you have worked on, you talked about this, many, many projects, right? Many that have flourished and many that have fallen by the wayside. So talk to us about some of the projects that have been the most impactful outside of what you've already shared with us and how they've shaped your vision for economic freedom and what lessons do you want to impart?
The most exciting projects are ones that are yet to be seen. We're developing a lot of really, really cool stuff. I'm excited. I think I shared that yesterday marked my 8 months of being here, but we're working on a number of things because I take that I increasingly want to evolve this space from just being a beautiful space into a vehicle for community and economic empowerment for the community.
And I'm seeing that with your programming.
Thank you.
It's been really, really beautiful. And those 3 words that we just talked about, your programming is a testament to those 3 words.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that affirmation. And I'll just say, get ready because you've only seen you've only seen glimpses. Everyone's only seen glimpses, but I'm fortunate to have a phenomenal team, including myself, 7 of us at the moment, and we're building up. 2025 is going to be phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm excited. I'll be here, I'm sure.
Well, good.
In all the ways.
So as far as the projects go, you haven't seen the best just yet. And I'm excited about that because it gives us something to look forward to. What I'll say is that a thing that I'm really, really appreciative of is I've made a couple of investments in my life already. It may be, like I like to say that marketing is definitely a gift of mine, but I think my highest gift is probably investing. In any event, I made 3 different investments in my lifetime that would have had me being a millionaire at this point. I'm not a millionaire. And
Not yet.
Not yet. Well,
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. And by the way, I got to say, like, I'm actually happy because what I'm recognizing now, is that I had to go through a journey. I had to go through the journey that I went through because the reality of it is that I was, in ways that I couldn't appreciate until more recently, I was definitely confident, but on the cusp of like arrogant and cocky, and I needed to be humbled, and I needed a certain level of humility I just didn't have. I always felt when I was coming up and when I was at Deloitte and working for Dan, I was like, shit, I did it. Y'all could do it too.
Feeling yourself.
I was feeling myself.
But and we should be feeling ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But we got to stay grounded at the same time and rooted.
I didn't appreciate how lucky I was and how I felt like I did everything myself. I was a self-made man. I didn't recognize how many blessings afforded me to be in the position that I was. And in any event, man, that 7.5 year journey where I was basically making no income. I was spending the money I had. I was selling off assets and everything to continue. Man, that just brought me down to the ground and it helped me understand that, man, there are so many people similar to me that have just a tremendous amount of creativity, a tremendous amount of genius. They're all around you. And given that the way that our current setup is that there is a number of people that have been blocked off or locked out of really being able to bring their genius out. So what I share, and I'll share this anywhere, is that like Detroit is a beautiful place.
Yes.
Full of people, full of genius, full of talent, but it's also a place at the moment that is full of people that are underprivileged economically. And so I believe, and I grew up poor, Section 8 housing, and so that poorness lended me a forced resourcefulness, which would then end up growing as creativity. I feel like there's a number of us that have figured out ingenious solutions to our everyday problems. But unfortunately, because a number of us, we don't have the credentials, we don't have the polished, communication skills, we don't have the connections, the resources, et cetera, that genius only goes as far as our household. And I feel I think that our society is disadvantaged for not coming up with more creative ways of creating ladders and bridges to allow for all the genius that's within us. It's latent potential throughout this place. And so when we talk about what we're doing with the love building, a lot of what we're doing as far as empowerment is about creating that bridge to enable the genius, the creativity that is in us and has been latent in so many of us, because so many of us have just quite frankly, I tried. I tried for 7.5 years and it didn't work out. In any event, it's like some people have gone for it and it didn't work out. And the way this current economic setup is, if you could even afford to take those risks and they didn't work out, then you got to go do something that you don't want to do, and then you're trapped, and it kind of sucks something out of your soul.
Yeah.
What we're building here, and I think it's right that we're called the love building. We're literally building a mechanism for love to allow for folks to re-tap into that genius, that creativity within them, and we want to create a bridge. We can't do everything for everyone, but we at least want to create that bridge, put some programming that will support people regardless of where they are on the idea stage, to be able to progress, connect with others that could take that thing further. And we're, this world, I think that all the solutions to all of the world's issues are within poor people. And we've been very, very dumb and foolish in discounting poor people because they're poor, not understanding that a lot of the poverty is systemic in nature.
Yes.
So in any event, we're going to change that. And I'm super duper excited because, again, 8 months in, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
And I'm really appreciative to you kind of sharing that you're already seeing it. If you're already seeing it, then just get ready because you ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. So what final piece of inspiration do you have for the listeners as we get ready to wrap up and you share with them how they can stay in touch with you?
I'll say this. There's so my dad's a preacher. And so I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to paraphrase a piece that I've seen in the Bible.
Okay.
There's this part in the Bible where it's like there's a bunch of kings. It's in heaven, and there's a bunch of kings surrounding God, and all day they're basically taking their, they see God, and then they take their crowns off, throw it to the ground, yeah, hallelujah, put their crowns back up, open their eyes, see God again, put it down, say hallelujah. And I think that each of us, we're all one-on-ones, we're all unique. And each of us have a fragment of something really, really, really unique, deeply special. And you got to do the inner work. You got to do the inner rooting to connect with that. But if you connect with that and you're true to yourself, then that is when you are the one-on-one where we can't get that from anywhere else. And so you do that and you bring that beauty inside of you, outside of you. And it's almost like, I don't know if these people actually did it, but I would say, like, when we think about Michael Jackson, when we think about Michael Jordan, when we think about like a Beyonce, when we think about some of these people that are like, yo, it really looks like that person found their thing and went all the way. That all the way, regardless of what, I gave entertainment examples, but like the beauty, like when you just see someone that really found their thing, is really rooted in themselves, it's so beautiful. And I have this vision of like that vision that, painted in heaven could be on earth if everyone was truly rooted and connected to themselves and is living within their respective gift and bringing that out. Then we would be awestruck all the time. It's just like, oh, that's beautiful, regardless of whatever that thing is, because each of us have that beauty.
Yeah, and you're talking about like the having an individualized pathway in life, and that you're really inviting us to think about what it really means to see ourselves abundantly and to live in the world abundantly. Although we're talking about financial freedom, right, as one of the connecting points. And even though, yes, you talked about entertainers, it's making me think about Malcolm Gladwell's book, I think David and Goliath, where he talks about the 10,000 hours, right? The reason why we know the greats is because these people knew what they were put on this planet to do, and they were willing to put in the work to keep rising and being the best they could be, irrespective to that purpose. And we know that in life, we have many, many purposes, right? There's not just one thing that we were put on the planet to do, which is why we have serial entrepreneurs and we have people that are entertainers and authors and all kinds of things, because it is truly unlimited. So thank you so much for inviting us to think about abundance in all shapes and forms, to think about our failures as abundance, to think about our lives as a canvas that we are constantly co-creating, and that everything that comes in our pathway is a part of the journey to help us to come more within ourselves and the freedom that already exists within. So thank you, King.
Oh, no, thank you.
For everything you're doing, for your partnership. And I want to share my very, very, very deep gratitude for you being with me. It has been an amazing conversation, and I hope that the insights that we have shared with you today has helped you to tap more into your healing and liberation for yourself and for all the people in this world that are essentially waiting on you. So tune in for the other 8 episodes that we have on the Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact series and the 100+ additional episodes that we have on the Be Well Beautiful People podcast. If you found value in today's show, show us some love by telling all of your people about it. Rate our YouTube channel and whatever podcast platform you are listening on. And of course, make sure that you show love to the Love Building by coming into all of the unique programming opportunities that they have. They are one of our strategic partners for this beautiful body of work, and I am so, so grateful for them. And if you haven't picked up my book, please do so. Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy is available at DemarraWest.com, and you can save a whopping 25% off just by using the code Alchemizing. The Be Well Beautiful People podcast, as I shared before, is sponsored by the Amazing Love Building, a subsidiary of Allied Media Project and home for the social justice and creative community right here in Detroit. We're also supported by H&B Building Services, providing top-notch, reliable building services for all your personal and professional needs, and the Lip Bar, which is all about helping to bring the beauty outside of you that already exists within.
Shout out to the Lip Bar.
So we're going to leave you with the words of Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it is done. Until next time, beautiful people. Ashe.